You got a lot of tasks that you want to pass off to somebody else? Well, just stick around and listen to this episode.
The Christian Principles Podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation, but bear in mind, the thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and not necessarily the Herzog Foundation.
The Christian Principles Podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation, but bear in mind the views and opinions expressed here are those of the hosts and not necessarily of the Herzog Foundation.
Welcome to the Christian Principles Podcast. I'm Matt George.
Mark Zockoll, we are pumped today to talk about not working and making sure that we are doing as little work as possible, right?
That's right. We don't want to work.
Yeah, we don't
Just
want
stay
to
away
work.
stay away from it.
We are talking about delegation today, something that we all probably would like to do a little bit more of, perhaps though we have an issue with it. And joining us today, his great self, the man himself, the one that we look up to and hope to be like someday, to emulate, to be just like not only a namesake, but also just in kind. Mark Minkus is joining us again. Mark, thanks for being here with us today.
Well, thanks for having me and for that introduction. And I'll just take a second to say who I am. My name is Mark Minkus. I was a private school leader for 33 years, and for 21 of those years, I was a head of school at a preschool through 12th grade Christian school. And then for 12 years, I was a head of intermediate and middle school at a Jewish day school. And about a year and a half ago, I retired from that. And now full time, what I do is my website is theprivateschoolleader.com. I have got a podcast, the Private School Leader Podcast. We're up to about 169, 170 episodes. And so if you need help with anything under the sun to do with leading your school, you can check that out. And I do private coaching. And so the privateschoolleader.com/coaching for one-on-one clients, if that's something that is interesting to any of your leaders. But I'm excited to be here today. Thank you both for having me.
All right, so the topic today is delegation. That's why we brought Mark, not the Mark that's here all the time. That's why we brought Mark with us, because he's got some thoughts on delegation, and then we'll let him share those thoughts, and then we'll contribute ours afterwards. So Mark, take it away.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me. The first thing that I wanted to mention to your listeners is that I think sometimes that our biggest strength can also be a really big weakness. And what I mean by that is that as private school leaders, as leading our Christian schools, you have a bias towards action, you have a bias towards problem solving, you have a bias towards getting things done immediately. And let's face it, we've all been there where someone is in your office in the hallway and they're presenting the problem, and we're not really listening, we're already solving the problem. And so my first thing that I want to mention is if you want to get great at delegating, you need to start asking yourself a question. And that question is who? So we go right to how and when. Our default with problem solving action, that this bias that we have, is to immediately jump in and do the thing. And so what I'm encouraging your listeners to do is that the next time, and this will take time to practice it, but if you next time ask yourself as the problem comes across through email, through a post-it note, through a text, through a face-to-face in the hallway, or sitting in the third row bleachers at the basketball court, at the basketball game, and the problem presents itself, is to ask yourself who. Because part of our problem is that we never ask who, and if we never ask who, the answer is always it's me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the thing. And so we go right into how and when. So pause and ask who. Now, even if 80% of the time the answer is me, that other 20% of the time, it could be someone else. And I'm going to give you an example. And I saw this in real time 2 weeks ago. I have a client named Joe. He's in Southern California. And this was a real struggle for Joe because he is all about action, all about problem solving. This is a real issue for him. And he does everything, and it's not sustainable at his school. And so we've been working on this Ask How. And so I'm on a coaching call with him. It's about 4 o'clock, 4:30 his time. It's after school. And I can hear on the walkie-talkie, it says, "Hey, Joe, there's a construction vehicle parking blocking the entrance to where the parents are going to come pick up their kids for the basketball practice. And Joe stood up halfway out of his chair and was ready to go do a couple of things. And then he sat back down. I watched this unfold in real time. The light bulb went on, and he got on the walkie and he says, "Hey, Mr. Tom, could you go talk to the so and so about like moving their construction vehicle?" Mr. Tom says, "No problem." And then he says, "Hey, Dolores, could you send an email to the family group text or however they did it, WhatsApp, to let them know they need to pick up their daughter after basketball practice at the front entrance of the gym." And then boom, we went right back to our coaching session. And he was standing up to go talk to the construction people, to go, do something, send the parents an email or a text. And in that moment, he asked who, and instead of just immediately going into how. So I'll just pause there and see if either of you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the who, and even we asked the who, I think many times we're jumping immediately to, well, I need to go do this and I need to go do that. So we're getting beyond the I am the only one capable of getting this done.
And really, if we think we are the only ones capable of getting the thing done, that's not really a biblical viewpoint. In some ways, that's saying that I am somebody. And we are taught, of course, the self-deprecation that we ought to have. We're taught to be making sure we're thinking of the needs of others. There's a line, there's a fine line there because we are paid more. We should be able to do more. But if we know our job description, if we know our duties and we know their duties, there, I think there's also something to be said for you leaving your job, if you leaving your job for 2 weeks shuts the school down, you should leave for a month because that's not how that school should be operating. If you leaving for a little bit of time just totally renders that school helpless, that means it's your school and not God's school, and that's not a good place to be.
Yeah. And to just put a bow on that. So I think there's this, in my mind, there's such a thing as toxic servant leadership. And that is when we have this view of, in a Christian school, it's a ministry. I was called to this. And so I've got to do everything, grind myself into a fine powder, and then put that powder through the wood chipper. And that is not what God wants. And I can prove it to you. One of the biggest servant leaders in the Bible, in the Old Testament, Moses. Okay. And what did Jethro say when he saw Moses overwhelmed with a line, literally from when the sun came up till the sun came down, with people bringing him the problems? He said, "Moses, you can't keep doing this. You need to select a man from 12 men, one from each tribe, have them sort of be the filter, and then they'll bring the stuff to you." That is what servant leadership looks like, is to be able to do the things that no one else can do, but to empower other people to do what they can do. So I just think that sometimes in our Christian schools that we think that running ourselves into the ground and doing everything is servant leadership. And I disagree. And I think that the Bible in more than one place disagrees as well.
That's awesome. And Matt, you've had a comment on the whole Jethro smacking Moses in the back of the head before already. You remember that from an earlier podcast.
Oh
So that's
yeah.
great. Hey,
Yeah,
Mark, take us to the. No, go ahead.
no, that's good. I was just saying, I hit that so often, and that's been a big part of even my ministry. But I was even thinking about Jesus and the disciples. Jesus didn't go around and do all the preaching himself. He sent them out, and he didn't even just send them out by ones. He sent them out in twos and threes and whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of examples.
Yeah. So I wanted to move on to my next thought on delegation, and that is, I want to ask you a question, your listener. Are you asking or telling? So I'm going to say that again. Are you asking or telling? So I coach a private school. I coach a leader of a Christian school. She's in Minnesota, and she was getting really, really frustrated with some of her teachers. And I'm like, "Well, why?" And she's like, "Well, because I told them blah 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 to do this thing, and then it's a month later, and then they're not doing the thing." And I'm like, "Okay." And we got to the bottom of it, and because she's a nice person, There's a lot of nice guys and a lot of nice gals that are running Christian schools, and we suffer from nice guy and nice gal syndrome. And we, a lot of time, when we think that we're telling them to do something that is in their job description, and oh, by the way, we're not being mean if we tell someone to do something that they're supposed to do. And really, what we're doing is we're asking. And so if we're asking, then no is an acceptable answer.
Right.
And if we're asking, then the assumption on the part of that person is, I'm doing them a favor. And also, this is a one-time thing. When we think we're telling and we're really asking, it leads to a lot of frustration, because then the next time, because we think that they're going to show up for carpool every Thursday, and then the next Thursday they don't, we need to make sure that we know and can answer that question for ourselves. Are you asking or are you telling?
And that kind of relative trust isn't the right word, but being able to know in yourself what you want, even being able to determine that before you go to that person, is a big deal. Knowing that you want to go with this request or you want to go with this command, you identifying that before the conversation is going to help you out, help me out, help us out in that conversation, because I'm already establishing the lines of, I do need to tell you to make this happen. Or I am in a position to have the time to be able to see if I can make it your idea, or if I can let the question be enough.
I think even on my side of things, because I tend to do the same thing where people even ask me, are you asking me that? Or are you telling me to do that? And something to help is just, if you're asking in a polite way, you're telling them something you need to get done, just make sure you put like, I need this done by, have an end date. And that clearly is communicating, okay, this isn't just, I'm putting it up for an option. Like, I really do need this done at a certain point.
This episode is brought to you by our partners at the Herzog Foundation, whose mission aligns beautifully with ours to advance and support Christ-centered education. The Herzog Foundation exists to catalyze excellence in Christian schools, helping more children experience academic rigor, biblical truth, and strong moral character, all in a safe and nurturing environment. Whether through teacher training, principal development, or strategic media efforts, the Herzog Foundation is committed to helping you, the Christian school leader, fulfill your calling with excellence. Their vision is bold but clear, a national renaissance in Christian education that impacts culture for generations. At the Christian Principles Podcast, we're proud to stand with the Herzog Foundation in that mission. Learn more at herzogfoundation.com. Together, we're building schools and futures on the rock of Christ. And as always, tell them that the fellas here at the Christian Principles Podcast sent you their way.
Clap. If your teachers love using Google Classroom, there's one student information system that syncs with it easier than any other. With just one click, GradeLink syncs all assignments over and keeps everything up to date without any extra hassle. That sounds like a lifesaver. If that sounds like a lifesaver, visit cpp.gradelink.com to learn more about how it works.
And then the final thought that I had was, some of the time, the reason that our Christian school leaders don't delegate is because they don't know what to delegate. And so to give you a framework that I think can help, I want you to imagine, I want to paint a picture for you of what the end product looks like, and then I'll go back to the beginning. But I want you to imagine that you've got this really long piece of paper, and on it, it has 300 tasks, and those tasks are ranked 1 to 300. And underneath number 100 is a line, and underneath the number 200 is a line. So just imagine a top third, a middle third, and a bottom third. And so the way you're going to get to this is, and this isn't something, you might not be able to do this at school. This might be a weeknight or a weekend project, because interruptions happen, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm telling you, if you do this, you are going to be so much more productive, and it's going to be 50 light bulbs going on. So you have to start, though, by just doing a complete task dump. And every single task that you do, even if you only do it once a year, you open in prayer at the Christmas concert or whatever it is, everything. And so the only way you're going to be able to do that is to pull out your school calendar, to pull out your Google Calendar, to maybe pull out the yearbook, to look at old emails or Google
I
Docs and
like
just
this.
do
I like
all of this,
this. This is
dump
great.
all, brain dump all of it. And let's just say, for the sake of conversation, there are 300 tasks that you come up with. Okay, that's part one. Part two then is that you're going to rank every task. What is the most important thing that I do? What is the, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't matter if numbers 2 and 3 or numbers 41 and 42 are like, switched. It doesn't matter. You're going for, zones basically. And so then what you're going to have, you put a line through the 300 tasks on your brain dump. Now you have that big long piece of paper that I described before, a top third, a middle third, and a bottom third. And so if your number isn't 300, then just do the math and figure out where do I draw my lines to make the thirds. Then you look at the top third. Those are the things that only you can do and the things that you should do. The middle third are things that you do with others, and the bottom thirds are things that very, very likely you shouldn't be doing. And so sometimes we don't delegate because we don't know what to delegate. This will give you a clear list of what to delegate. And then the last piece is, next to each task on that bottom third, you write a name or two names of the who that could be. And the last thing I'll add is, our Christian schools are going to stay stuck for as long as the leaders of our Christian schools are spending time working on the bottom third at the expense of spending time working at the things on the top third of the list.
Oh, I want to crawl out of my seat right now. I want to crawl out of my seat, jump around a little bit, get a little charismatic on it. That is amazing. And the thing is, it's what anybody with a job description should be able to do with that job description anyway, because that job description should be able to be minute enough at points to actually list that out for us. And if we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, working ourselves out of a job, perhaps, if you want to think about it that way, creating those lists by which when we get turned into jelly on 50, the next guy can do it. This is what you have to do. This is what we have to do. We have to know what it takes. It's almost like with the schools that move from under the church to be independent, or a school that's gone from heavily reliant on the church to make up a massive amount of tuition, to saying we're going to rightly tuition our student, or we're going to rightly charge our students now. But wait a second, I don't actually know what it costs to run this institution. Well, very much the same way here. If you don't actually know what the jobs of the head of school ought to be, that differ from the jobs of a lead teacher or differ from the jobs of just a teacher, you might be better off to hire 5 more teachers than one head of school, or whatever that happens to be. Because if you can't, if the heads that be can't figure out why that job description is that much different than a teacher, or a lead teacher, or if the head of school can't figure out why they need that extra time, well, maybe they don't need extra time, but which is probably rarely the case. But still, yeah, man, that's great. Love the applicability of this.
And even just at the start of looking at what I do, even just starting there is so valuable.
Yeah. One of my coaching clients her name's Sarah. She's out in California. At one point, after she had done the 3/3 strategy, she had a hose. This was after an after school activity, the picnic tables. There was chalk involved, so there's chalk all over the picnic tables, and she's hosing down the picnic tables. And she just paused, and then she got on the walkie-talkie and she called Mr. Jim or whoever, and he came over. Hey, Miss Sarah, no problem at all. They're happy. A lot of times they're happy to do it, but we're just in such a default mode of doing the thing, number one. And number two, we want to prove that there's no task that's beneath us. And again, that's a little bit of the mixed up toxic servant leadership part. Of course, there is no task that is beneath you. We'll all pick up the moth. We'll all do the thing, whatever it takes. But that doesn't mean that you have to do that or should do that if someone on campus, that's their job and they're available to do it, then asking them to do it isn't being mean. It's smart. And then you could go work on something that's on that top third of the list. So, and then just to transition into what
Well,
Mark
really
mentioned
fast
before.
before you do that, Mark, really fast before you do that, I'm reminded of Mayor Mamdani up in New York City now. I saw him taking the last little bit of asphalt off the back of a asphalt truck, whatever they are, and putting it onto the road and tapping it down. And I think about maybe one of those high order tasks is you making sure that you are seen. It's so political. It sounds so dramatic, but making sure that you are seen on a work day in work gloves over a toilet. Because on a work day, when you're there with the school and you're there being one of the many sets of hands doing the workday jobs, I mean, don't have somebody take a picture of it, at some level, there's gotta be a balance there. But I can even see that as like a political thing that someone would do to set up a time of being seen doing that, which is probably not what we should do. But
Yeah, I,
that's what it makes me think of. Like you need to actually plan for that in your top third if if you really need to just have it done.
yeah, we had talked about this while painting and recording ourselves painting. So I think that was
That's
also
right. That's right. We did.
with servant leadership, but it's not so much to gloat or make yourself, but yeah, it is easy to get sucked into this office where nobody can see you're actually doing anything. So yeah, there is definitely going to need to be in that top third those tasks that make it clear I'm in it with the rest of you.
And that also ties into being a visible leader, because I think that we are, the ball and chain in our life is our desk and our email inbox and our computer. And we need to there is joy on your campus, that it's just not in your office. We need to go to that joy intentionally and not just by accident. That fills us up. And then we're out there, and then there's opportunities where, hopefully, when no one is watching, this isn't a photo servant leadership isn't a photo op. It's just integrity and wanting to serve however you need to. But the more you're out and about on the campus, the more those opportunities pop.
Matt, I think of you coaching basketball right now. Like people not again, you said it's not a photo op and certainly, but people don't if they've never coached before or they haven't been the AD or they don't know what that looks like, the amount of time that is nowhere in the job description of a school administrator to be a basketball coach, like that in and of itself would be something to point at and say, "Hey, not that you would need to do this, but for someone who was your greatest fan and was the number one person people got pointed to when other people had issues with what you were doing or not being visible, that person could say, well, actually, Matt coaches basketball. And unless you got an extra couple hundred hours in your winter and into your early spring, like you don't need to comment on what he's doing anymore.
Maybe I won't mention that basketball coaching is on my bottom third, but we'll keep going.
Yeah, I'll stop interrupting
So
Mark now. I'm sorry.
as long as it gives you joy, as long as it gives you joy. So then, just to pivot, to talk about, I came up with four things that I had to delegate, and that were kind of, either I didn't think about it or I just assumed, well, this is something that a principal or a head of school does, or I didn't have anybody to logically that what to hand it off to, etc. But the first is creating the master schedule. I don't like crossword puzzles. I don't like Sudoku. I think that the reason I don't like puzzles or riddles is because for 33 years, all day long, I was trying to find elegant solutions to complex problems. And when I'm needing a brain break, I'm not going to do it in that way. Okay. And so, that being said, the master schedule is like this giant four-dimensional puzzle with all of the and there's the fourth dimension is emotion. That language teacher that only wants to come in for half a day in the afternoon, and then you've got to start to build the master schedule off of her preferences. Okay, so there's this master schedule, the idea of what time of year it happens. And what I was able to realize is that I'm not gifted in this area. And then I started thinking about who, and it was one of my computer guys who was very analytical and very much like, set aside the emotion of the different decisions and what time of day math was taught by this certain teacher. And he actually enjoyed it because he enjoyed puzzles. And so that was one thing that I had to be open minded about. Like, I don't need to do this. Just because it's called master schedule doesn't mean it has to happen with me. The second thing that I delegated was book ordering. That was just a mess for me because it's in the state of Pennsylvania with the State Department of Education and all of the forms and all of this and all of that. And it's high stakes. Like, you got to get it right. And then you got to hopefully wait for the budget to pass, which in Pennsylvania didn't happen for months after July 1st. And then you're hoping that if the budget does pass, that you're going to get your books in a timely fashion. So I just realized that it was too high stakes and found one of my office staff and just said, listen, this is your responsibility. Figure it out, get really, really good at it. And she did. And then that was something that came off of my plate. Another thing was achievement test prep. Achievement tests happen every year. They're important, they're high stakes, and they're very, very precise. You better make sure you have the right number of answer sheets and the right number of test booklets, and that the schedule is correct, and that they're not cutting the grass outside of all of the open windows at that time, and all the different things that you have to think of. I think that school leaders in a school of even a small school, that if at all possible, to delegate the test prep and materials and all of that to someone so that you can have oversight of the implementation. And then the last thing was some annual events. When I started out as a young administrator at my Christian school with 225 kids, I was very heavily involved with planning graduation and the concerts and this and that and the other thing. But as the school grew, I just realized, like, I can't be the the event planner for the school. And so you can have the athletic director be in charge of the sports banquet. You can have the music teacher be in charge of the choral concert at Christmas. You can have the 12th grade class advisor play a large role in graduation. And then you can be kind of oversight and touch base now and then. And so those were the four things for me that were very much time consuming, and that I had to just take a step back and recognize, like, this doesn't have to be me, and it could probably be done by someone else much better. And it was.
Man, of those four things, the achievement testing was a chore. I like the master schedule. I appreciated that. That was fun. But the achievement testing, man, I take that away from me as fast as possible. You're right. I should have done that a lot earlier. Matt, what do you think about those?
No, when I was looking at Mark's list, Mark, you've mentioned about, what brings you joy. And unfortunately, puzzles do bring me joy. Let's just think of that. But the master schedule is something even this year that I did delegate. And it's nice because then it's brought to me almost all done. And then I can look at it in my way that I enjoy doing and saying, okay, here's an issue, but I'm not having to do the whole thing. And book ordering too. Yeah, I let that go. I didn't even start with that. I dropped that before I became an administrator. And the same thing for test prep. I'm always looking for the way to kind of automate this as opposed to just, giving the responsibility to somebody else. But yeah, those are all right up my alley for what I can easily hand off to somebody else.
Are you going to give your four? I'm going to go give my four, Matt. Who's going next?
You give your four. I've got two good ones and two not so good ones.
Well, I think I'm kind of in the same boat. I'll give the two not so good ones. They're kind of easy. But I did landscaping and school cleaning. Landscaping and school cleaning, those were things that I had seen done prior by individuals that were in my role, and I wanted nothing to do with them. And I'm not saying like the hardcore janitorial every day after school necessarily, but just as was said to you, as Mark said earlier, getting sucked into certain things that really I understand everybody else is out of the office. You got the toilet that you get caught on the office, the toilet's plunged. Okay, I'm going down, putting on the gloves, going down, I'm going to do that real fast, come back. Okay, so that happens, once, twice, three times a year or so. That is what it is. We'd all to go do it. That's fine. But there was a matter of school cleaning that I walked into it was almost expected that if nobody else was going to be there, then it was just going to default back to the head of school in that situation. And I from the start said, no, like that's not going, I will not be the catch-all for this specific sort of miss. That can't be me. That's gotta go out. So I guess that was as much of a decision as it was a delegation. But another one would have been landscaping, which was kind of the same vein. I walked into a role of there was a certain bit of the landscaping that was done by this position that it must have been the proclivity of the person prior to me. I wanted nothing to do with it, and so it became a paid position to make it happen. Or I think I might have gone to volunteer. Somebody they made it into part of their larger job. But so there was a couple pieces of school cleaning and landscaping. Two ones that were more specific, probably the better ones, so to speak, of delegation. I should not be doing the school's social media or website development or search engine optimization. I dabble in all that. It can be, I know enough to be dangerous, so to speak, but I should not be the one who's responsible for getting my Christian school to the top of to the top of the Google rankings when you look at, Christian schools and you name it. So SEO optimization was something that I delegated out to ministry marketing. So make sure you go to missional marketing and have missional marketing help you out. They were wonderful to work with, and they were very clear with a nice dashboard as to how you were growing or how you went from seventh, sixth to fifth to first for certain phrases. And they did a great job also of going and finding the different places online that private schools get mentioned into niche.com and the privateschoolreview.com and boosting you there and cleaning up those spaces. So missional marketing was wonderful to work with as far as an SEO goes. And for my last one, I would say I do not want to be doing anything besides hobnobbing and kissing babies at faculty and staff events. I do not want to be doing the catering. I do not want to be doing the trash pickup. And I would say I shouldn't be doing the trash pickup. I shouldn't be doing the catering at faculty and staff events because I need to be there to be saying thank you to the people as much as I possibly can and face to face, sitting down with them, breaking bread with them, and not asking of myself or not asking of them to even feel bad watching me go and be all in a tither because the dinner is not quite what I want it to be or not quite ready, or I gotta stop having conversations to go clean. I want to make sure that in those times I'm gonna pay extra. I'm gonna go and make sure I'm gonna tip well for somebody else to do that. I would say that another easy delegation of, well, I was trying to be creative with this, but an easy delegation for me was anything to do with a faculty or staff dinner. I did not want to be doing anything other than enjoying myself in those dinner times. Matt, what were your four?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with my good ones because when it comes to dress code enforcement, I don't need to be telling girls that their skirts are too short. Like, I just don't need to be doing that. And so I let that one go so fast. And, only if parents have some issues and they need to talk about it, am I really involved with dress code. And I appreciate that and that I have capable individuals to lead that. One that's kind of interesting, I was thinking to try to be outside of the box of not just delegating to our teachers or to our administration, but even delegating to students a little bit. I love Spirit Week. We're actually in the middle of Spirit Week right now as we're recording this. And so I love coming up with the creative ideas, but the students love doing that too. And so, being able to hand off something like that even you can get the students involved has been something that's been really kind of special, that it's a load off my plate and it's boosting morale all at the same time. So those are my two really good ones off the bat. I was going to say, clean up the vomit. That's an easy answer because I don't clean up vomit, just period. I don't do that. And we've got some people here that are pretty good at it. So I just let that one go. And I guess
Would it lead to more vomit? Is that why?
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, if it's blood, sign me up. I'll come and I'll soak it up. I mean, that's fine. But vomit, no, not doing it. Just going to contribute to the problem. But I guess the last thing I was just going to say, this is one of the areas that I am absolutely not good at in being able to identify not just I shouldn't be doing this. I'm pretty good at doing that. But finding that who is so hard because I want to delegate the basketball coaching position. I want to. but nobody will take it. I want to be able to delegate some other responsibility. Mark mentioned the website, like that would be a wonderful thing. And yet identifying those individuals is sometimes extremely challenging, not as easy as we would think. That's where, from even just in this conversation, just thoughts of, put it out there. Don't just be struggling with it yourself. Put it out there for others to recognize you're looking for somebody to step up and take that position. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's not all or nothing when it comes to delegating because, as you pointed out, Matt, it's like, yeah, there were years where I coached the fifth and sixth grade girls basketball team because my daughters were in fifth or sixth grade. But then I coached it for 4 years after my youngest was not on the team anymore because no one else wanted to coach it. And so there are some things where we're just going to have to keep them because there isn't someone yet who has stepped up or distinguished themselves that they are capable of handling it. However, if we view things through the lens of how, or excuse me, of who, not how, if we can get to the point where our default starts to be who else could do this, then what it does is create some margin in your schedule so that if you are coaching basketball or if you are doing fill in the blank, the thing that hasn't been delegated yet, then that can create a little bit of space for you to be able to do that and not feel like you're drowning in the deep end of the pool. So, yes, there are always going to be the pebble in the shoe or multiple pebbles in the shoe, but I just think it's super important for us to switch up our mindset about delegation because we have such a bias towards doing that we need to look at it differently.
Yeah. And I think the three major points that you gave to ask the who, and then double check are you asking or are you telling? And then making that list of 300 and breaking it down by thirds is just a great way to get us going and making ourselves stronger.
All right, Mark. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today. Could you, for our listeners, tell them one more time where they can catch you, plug yourself, tell them what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you. So the Private School Year podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, just check it out. A lot of stuff there that I think can be helpful. And then coaching, I help leaders get out of survival mode and start to thrive at school. And if you want to work with someone that's been there, done that with 21 years of being head of school at a Christian school, it's a very unique situation as far as being working at a Christian school. And the privateschool.com/coaching, if that's something you want to learn more about. But I really appreciate you guys having me here today. It's been a pleasure and God bless.
All right.
I love talking to Mark Minkus. He is, I think, what I like, I don't want to just say that. I want to actually
Absolutely.
give a reason. I
I'm
think the
writing down the whole
reason I
time.
like talking to Mark, I think the reason I like talking to Mark so much is because he's so practical. He takes the things that I would say, yeah, absolutely, that needs to happen. But then he finishes the thought with, okay, and then this is what you do about that. You not only do you have the thoughts of, okay, I should have a task dump, but then he says, this is how you do it. And then after the task dump, this is the way you implement it. And that's where the coaching, that's where the having thought through not just the what am I going to do, but also, okay, what do I do after the action? I think that's hugely significant and what I really enjoy about listening to Mark Minkus. So
No, ditto. I really enjoy it. All right, it is time for our administrator shout out. And for this episode, that goes to Kristen Ferry of Venture Christian School in Los Gatos, California. Kristen is the, let's see here. Kristen is the elementary principal at Venture Christian. Since Mark is driving, I'll go ahead and pray for Kristen as we wrap up this episode. Father, thank you so much for the opportunity we have to serve as leaders. And I know it is often difficult, as we've talked about, to just put ourselves out front and serve until we have completely wore ourselves out or we've perhaps even dropped some responsibilities. I pray that you would help Kristen as she seeks to find that balance and knowing at what point she needs to seek help from others, and that maybe she's even done very well with this area of delegation and can even be a great mentor for others to learn. Just pray that you would protect her, guide her, give her the health and strength that she needs as she continues through this year. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, we are on track to be the speakers, to be the hosts of the Maryland Association of Christian Schools Administrators Retreat. We're hosting that event again. It's on March 23rd at Restoration Farm in Harford County, Maryland. Please, it's actually Street, Maryland, the city. Please make sure you are there. Please make sure you find a way to take that time off, delegate some things, to be there with us. We'd love to see you, love to have you. Otherwise, make sure you follow us. We are close to 100 subscribers on YouTube. I don't know what happens at 100 subscribers, but I want to find out. So if you haven't followed us or subscribed to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, and we would love to we'd love to see what happens at 100. Okay. Other than that, thanks for going with us today.
We want to thank you for listening. We're honored that you spend this time with us each week. Our heart is to bring you practical conversations and resources that really serve you as a Christian school leader. One of the best ways you can help us spread the word is by leaving us a review and sharing the podcast with other Christian school principals you're connected with. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Join the conversation and share any posts that resonate with you. Every share makes a difference in helping more leaders find encouragement and practical tools. And remember, the podcast is just one way we help. We also love serving schools through speaking and workshops. Our keynotes and sessions are designed to give you actionable strategies you can take back to your team and implement right away. If you'd like more details, just send us an email at info@christianprinciplespodcast.com. We'd love to connect. Until next time, thanks for joining us on the Christian Principles Podcast.